Joining us now, Ambassador Joe Keshi. He's Nigeria's former Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Ambassador Joe Keshi, thank you for joining us in our Abuja studio. Also, you can also see on the screen there, we still have with us retired Army General Cecil Ezehaigbe. Thank you for staying with us. Now,
thank you.
This is where we are. Again. This is where we are. This is how far the story has unfolded with the security situation as they experienced it in Rivers State today. Liberous, where does this leave us?
You see, we talked about elections and the fact that nothing has changed with our election. Even though at every turn you hear, people giving kudos, depending on, how well they succeed in the electoral processes. But all of this is coming to the fore right from 2015 because for the first time in 2015 you had the gladiators, the political gladiators in different camps. In 1999, if you remember, all the political gladiators, some of them at that time were, political apprentices, were all in the same camp. And so if you also remember, the fallout of the 1999 election was the rise of militancy in the Niger Delta, because some of them felt that they were used to prosecute the election, and after the election, it was impossible to assess, the political leaders at that time, and so, but meanwhile, they were already armed before the election, and so they had to use what they had to get what they want. That gave rise to militancy, subsequently kidnapping. And then 2003 election, if you remember, in some areas in Rivers State, elections held, and everybody that registered in those polling units voted, and they voted for a particular political party. If you ask some persons in Rivers State, they will tell you that since 1999, they've never seen a ballot, in their community, but votes numbers actually are always returned from these places. 2007, it was the same thing. You always saw, large numbers. And the insecurity was not this in the fall, because it was managed, because they were all in the same political party. In 2015, for the first time, you saw, the gladiators, separate camps. And so that brought the crisis to the fore. And so also the boys also were divided along party lines. And so we saw it was almost as if, INEC was preparing for a war with the election in Rivers State. We saw attempt at conducting election, the first ballot, second ballot, the third ballot. At the end of the day, INEC had to manage the crisis, and results were subsequently announced in some places, even though till the conclusion, elections were inconclusive. And then, talking about the political actors also, you also saw the run-up to the election, you saw the court cases, that as we speak now, the APC didn't fit candidates for the House of Representatives and the Senate in Rivers State. These were not, some of these court cases were not they were not fallout, they were not processes or fallout of democratic, processes. So yes, it's democracy at work, but it's part of the, the struggle for political capital and political power in the state that actually led to some of this insecurity that we are noticing. And until we separate, these manual processes of conducting elections in Nigeria, you are continually going to have, this insecurity in places like this, where some people would think, well, depending on where the allegiance, the pendulum of the allegiance swing to, then you now begin to hear accusations of the military. Remember, in 2015, it was the opposition accusing the governor, the current governor, of using the military. We're in the studio here also getting feedbacks from your reporters on the feed. It was the opposition that were accusing the governor. But today, the shoe is on the other foot. And so it is the governor that is accusing the military now. And that also quickly brings me to the issue of, the ballot box snatching and the use of maximum force, the provisions in Section 33, subsection 2, paragraph B of the 1999 Constitution. In such cases, what would you expect the military to have done without resorting to use of firearms?
All right. I want to bring, pardon me, please. I want to bring Ambassador Joe Keshi into this conversation. You're a diplomat. Even though some would say what the international community thinks of Nigeria is sort of secondary because we're in a critical situation. And what we think about this situation is paramount. The EU Election Observer Mission says it will give initial assessment of the election on Monday, February. But this conversation has to start now. We don't have to wait for them. What is your immediate response to these kind of stories coming out of our election serially?
Well, it has, I can't hear you, Megan.
Oh.
Yes. Well, I guess it has become, it has become a pattern in this country to organize elections like this. And you can definitely expect that the international community, particularly the foreign observers, will issue their, their report. And I can tell you one of the lines you will see when you hear that report, based on the outcome, they will probably say something like, well, look, there were irregularities, but perhaps not sufficient enough to affect the outcome of the election. This has become the pattern over time, when you hear the international community observers talk about elections with so much, irregularities in some parts of the country, as we are hearing now. But it should be worrisome to all of us in this country that we've been having elections for so many years, and every year we go through this same cycle of, either violence or irregularities or something, hiccups and so on. It doesn't tell well of us as a country to start with. It doesn't give people so much confidence, about us. It also questions our capacity and our ability to properly do things or to organize elections. Look, I always make this joke to my friends, and I was just telling General that I say this to my friends all the time, that if FIFA was to give Nigeria the right to organize election, to organize the World Cup, that the day we are awarded that right, that's the day FIFA should stop coming to Nigeria. FIFA should just come a week to the commencement of the game, stay in the hotel, and at 10 o'clock Saturday, we take them to the field. It will be some venues will not be ready, but the games we comment, we will muddle through, and at the end of the day, it will be reasonably successful. And that has been our pattern. But it is worrisome and it's shameful, really, when you come to think of it. And that's why you find our country swimming, people, observers, international observers, local observers that have made it big business, roaming all over the country to give a verdict on us. How many of the advanced countries do we send observers to watch an election? Practically none. So we really need to think about this and possibly begin to see how we can grow up and manage our affairs, better than we are doing today.